Hey, how's it going, everybody? Jamie McDonald here with our special guest, Rob Krueger. Mike's not here this week. Mike's traveling. You know how that is. He's one of those jet set employees that's always somewhere else in the country when he's not at home doing this show. So, like I said, we're welcoming Rob back. Rob was on before, and Rob also runs a very awesome and very active podcast show. Rob, why don't you tell everybody the name of your show and what your schedule is like?
Yeah, Jamie, it's good to see you again. Had you on the show not too long ago, you and Mike, and it was a blast. The show is called Take and Talk Pics. It's a 3-day-a-week podcast, and it started out being strictly interviews and mostly talking about the business of photography and kind of how we run things and move from one level to the next and how we develop our businesses and the ups and downs. My goodness, I've failed a million times, so I learn stuff too every time, so it's awesome. But it's transitioned into having a Monday message, the interview on Wednesday, and our fundamental Fridays where it's just about the education of photography. So it's a fun ride and plenty of work, especially being a full-time photographer on the side of that. So
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Just looking at the schedule that you run, and I was just, saying before the show, I don't even know, I have a hard time doing a bi-monthly show here, and you're pulling it off 3 days a week. It's pretty impressive on top of shooting and on top of running another job too, as well. I mean, you're a pretty active guy. You're definitely a source of inspiration for those of us who are trying to put together a show. Motivation for
well,
sure.
I appreciate you saying that because most days I'm just tired and feel like a normal average nobody. So it's it's good
Well,
to have that appearance.
I don't know if I'd say that. Looking at the guest roster that you've had some pretty impressive interviewees on your show. It's very cool. You want to take just a second, to talk about how you've gone about, selecting people that you're going to have on your show, or even how you've contacted people and how that's come about. Because, like I said, it's pretty impressive, the list of people that you've put together in such a short period of time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you start doing something like this and you want to meet these people, Jared Poland from Frono's Photo and Lee Morris from F Stoppers, Skip Cohen, he's like a huge authority in wedding photography. There's just all these different names. Jim Harmer, Improve Photography, Chris Smith. Oh my gosh, there's a bunch of them. Well, you sit back and you look at these people who you a little bit idolize, and you think, oh my gosh, I want to be like one of them in this industry, or I want to meet them. And that's all it started, was a pipe dream. Just like one day I'd like to talk to these guys. One day I'd like to talk to these inspirational people that I've been following. So start out with anybody and everybody you can find. And I went with my industry, wedding photography, and I know plenty of wedding photographers. So I was knocking on doors of people I'm a little bit familiar with or local nearby. And it just moved into building up the confidence to say, you know what, I think I have something here, and I think I can knock on the doors. And I just shot an email. I think with Jim Harmer, I couldn't find an email for him, so I went on Twitter and I just tagged him and I said, "How do I get in touch with this guy?" And he
Wow.
came back and he's like, "This is how you get in touch with me." So it's been an awesome ride. And then after meeting him, he introduced me to the Out of Chicago stuff, which is where I found you and Mike. And it's just been an awesome blast. Actually, a lot of the people I've had are from the Out of Chicago conference. So you just gotta do it, do the work, and knock on some doors. And you know what? The worst thing that can happen is you hear no, and you just move on. So
Yep. That's cool. I guess it's good proof, through watching what you're doing, that all these people out there, the people that we look up to, because I've got a list of people that I'm, stalking them on Flickr and on Instagram and on Facebook, just watching their work and just glamoring after what it is that they do. But, watching what you've pulled off or what you're doing just shows, there are people on the other side of that Instagram account or that Flickr page or, what have you. So it's cool that you stepped up and you said, I'm going to reach out to these people and get in touch, and, and you've done it, and you've kind of brought them to another audience too. So much respect for that. It's very cool.
well, thank you. Yeah.
And then, so you developed, like I said, you started out, or like you said, you started off, it was going to be primarily focused towards the business side of photography. And then you've kind of branched out, you've got to fill 3 days. 3 days, that's a huge schedule. And so now you've broken off into a couple of different segments. Do you want to tell the viewers just a little bit about how you determined, what it was you wanted to branch off into, these little subsections that you're doing on Wednesdays and Fridays?
Yeah,
Or I'm sorry.
sure. I mean,
No, go ahead.
Mondays and Wednesdays.
Wednesdays,
Wednesdays,
yes.
that's cool.
Yep.
I mean, the interview, I'm not going to lie, that's my favorite part to the show, to the podcast, and just it's the networking and the interaction. I really love doing that. but I just felt that there was this need for a little bit different take than just these repeated questions with a little bit different answers from different people. So I developed the Monday message first, and that was kind of analyzing the fact that knowing the good and bad in a business, especially photography, like it's very specific target market here, photographers who are in business. And it's just telling this is good, this is bad, or this is how you learn from the hard times. That's pretty limited. So I wanted to have this other part where it's like this Monday message where I kind of talk about like the gratitude attitude. You have to be grateful for the things in your life and understand that this is here for a reason. We don't have to go clock into a job, most of us who are doing full-time photography, and it's really hard to remember that every day. We take it for granted and just think, it kind of is a job. Well, yeah, but you chose this over, just getting stuck somewhere. So it's a really good thing. And that's just like one little episode, but it's kind of this mindset stuff aside from the business that goes into it. I do talk some business and how you should talk to clients or interact with them. Then I started developing the Fundamental Fridays, where it was like I found a vast majority of the audience was people who are very interested in photography and kind of at that point where they might pivot into going full-time photographer or wanting to take this on as a career. So I said, you know what, let's dial it back and go through what is ISO, what is shutter speed, and work our way up through the progress of, beginner to intermediate to advanced photography tools and techniques, just the learning. It's not going to be quite the experience you'd get in a classroom or a seminar, because those are a totally different realm with the hands-on experience and being with other people. But it's a good taste of that to kind of get some education that way. So I've kind of done that, and I've been dabbling with the idea that I should bring back 2 more interviews a week and pump it up to 5 days. So we'll see. Don't take me at that, but don't quote me.
Wow.
I said it.
Geez, that'd be pretty incredible. You pull that off. That's awesome. It's great that you're doing the fundamentals. Right. The fundamentals Friday. It's people like you that are making photography accessible for so many people too. There are still, it's crazy to think, but there's still a lot of people out there that like to hoard information. They like to hoard technique, or they like to hoard, locations where they're shooting, or frame of mind when it comes to conceptualizing shoots and things like that. And it's good to see that there's somebody who's out there like you that's willing to say, look, this is how you go about doing this. This is how we make this happen, or this is, how we think about doing something like this. And you're not putting it out there just to this little group of people in your community. You're putting it out there to the world. So, again, I'm just going to have to give you some praise and thanks, for doing what you do that way as well. It's great that there are people like you out there doing that for everybody.
Well, I wasn't always like that. I was that person hoarding my information because it's so valuable. But the reality is, you can find most of this information anywhere.
Sure.
Go on YouTube and do a quick search. Hit Google and find a blog post. It's out there. Somebody's willing to divulge that information. I just figured, why should I hold on to it? What I know is nothing special. It's just the way I do it might be a little different, or the way I convey it might be a little bit different. It can click for somebody. Yep. So that's what opened me up. But man, at first it took me a long time, years, to get over that feeling of I got this valuable stuff. It's not as valuable as I thought.
Yeah, once you've got access to the internet, you've pretty much got the encyclopedia of everything at your fingertips. So at that point, yeah, you're right. Why not share? And like you said, the way that you get a point across, or the way that you might talk about something, might resonate well with somebody that somebody on YouTube can't get across to everybody else. So again, very cool that you do that. So part of the usual show format is that we like to do an image share, and you're kind enough to prep some images for me to be able to share with everyone. So if you don't mind, I'll pull up a screen share real quick, and I'm controlling it from my end. So I'll pull the images up, I'll let it sit up there, and then I'll let you talk about the photo that we're looking at, if that's all right with you.
Cool.
All right, so let me oops, hold on here. I've got like 20 windows open here. All right, here we go. All right, so what we're looking at right here is the a golfer mid-swing, if you want to talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. This is actually a friend of mine I had doing this, because we're both big time into golf. It's the only other thing I do other than pictures. So, I just wanted to get a conceptual shot of like what an advertisement might look like for Cobra Golf. It's a golf brand that I use and he really likes. So we were like, let's just do this. So we went out to a driving range, and they have this nice grass area we could do it. And I have an Alien B1600 up with a beauty dish, and that's kind of our front light there. And then I have a speed light, the SB900 for Nikon at full power as that little rim backlight.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to stage that whole backswing thing in the post production, but
Really?
I had him go up in his backswing, and kind of go through a swing, and I kept grabbing the shots in between until I finally said, you know what, I can't have you pose it. Let's do swing after swing after swing. So he's just hitting ball after ball after ball just to get this natural looking swing. We got a few other golfing friends, and they're just laughing at us because they're like, "That's a horrible swing. You're horrible." Like, just making fun of him, and I don't know. We just play around, So making that backswing was not super easy. I have like 4 or 5 versions when I was getting feedback from Facebook groups and saying, "How can I make this look more real?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a lot of practice over and over to make that look good. And I think I pulled the ads off of another version they had to kind of complete the concept.
Very cool. Very cool. It's cool to see somebody not just out making a shot, because the golf swing itself would have been a cool shot. But the fact that you actually, composed this entire like ad layout, as part of this concept, really cool idea. It kind of makes me think maybe I should think a little bit outside the box of some of the stuff that I do. Very cool. So the next shot is the color cloud. Again, another one of those things that I want to give a shot at. I like this.
Yeah, so the one problem with this picture, or the series that I think I have like 40 of them, is I won't tell anybody what I did. Not exactly. So in a basic realm, it was my first attempt at a photography trick to make high-speed photography possible without high-speed photography equipment. Mm-hmm. So a speed light can do extremely fast flash of power, and it has to be a lower power. I think it's 1/16 or less of power. Mm-hmm. And then it ends up pushing the shutter speed, or at least the relevant shutter speed for the flash, way up. So I actually shot these things at like 125th of a second.
Yeah.
There are no lights on, and I had it pre-focused. And then when I took the shot, that's when the flash went, and it made this really high speed capture because the flash power was correct for that. So super that cool. Was the experiment there more than anything. But it just turned into a fun project of these color clouds. So
I know the technique sounds very similar to what you would do with capturing water droplets.
Right. Yeah, to get that really frozen look, like really sharp.
So I've done that. I think, in all honesty, aside from the technical aspects of camera and flash settings, just the combination how you got these two flows coming together worked out pretty darn awesome as well.
Right.
I'm sure. Right. And I'm guessing with something like this that it's if you don't get it right the first time, you're kind of screwed a little bit for a while because you're going to have to change out water and start all over from scratch because I'm guessing your water's pretty much ruined after. Yeah. Wow.
I think it was like 400 or 500 attempts to get my 40 or so shots.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you've got some time invested in the project.
Couple weeks of playing with that. So
very cool. So the next one, I'm a huge sucker for black and white landscapes, and this one's just out of the ballpark. This is the lone tree photo.
This was my nature photography revival shot, is what I kind of refer to it as, because I started doing nature photography and macro and landscapes, and I'm here in Illinois, out in the burbs of Chicago, and let me tell you, nature here is amazing. No, just kidding. It's awful. There's nothing here. So I was, just a student and playing with it, and I liked it because it didn't talk back, but I've since then ventured into weddings and portraiture, and I really enjoy all of that now. But last year, and it happened to be what ended up the coldest day of the year in Chicago, I was out just like, there's snow on the trees. I'm going to go out and check it out. And I shot for a couple hours before I was about to freeze to death. So I figured, let's get out of here. And then there was this tree. I was like, I got to go take a look at that. So I actually approached it from where the right of the image would be, pretty far off. Walked up and I was like, I'm going to move around this, but really far back in case I want clean snow. So I kept circling around it this way, and then they just framed up perfectly with all those other trees reaching in. I think this is actually at 24 millimeters, but I'm really low to the ground and angling up, so it distorted even more on top because I didn't have my wide-angle lens on there. Not my ultra-wide lens, but it was one of those shots where when you took it, you knew you got it. And I was like, everything else I did today was a waste of time, but I'm so glad I came.
Well, it's, I have that philosophy myself. I'll go into a situation, and if I'm out for an afternoon or 2 days, whatever the case may be, if I'm out shooting I'm happy if I get the one good shot. It drives a couple of my friends nuts. You know, they'll ask how many photos I took, and so I got a good one. Like I took like 300, and I'm like, cool, I got one that I want. So I can respect that, getting that one shot and knowing you got it.
Yeah, Ansel Adams said, if you get 12 a year, you did amazing. So, I mean, I know there was a different time with film and they were a little bit more limited in that way, but I
Right.
kind of stick to that same philosophy because we should have that high of a standard. So
I agree totally. It's funny that the longer I've been shooting, the slower the additions to my Flickr stream have been amassing. So the next shot I'm looking at is a very beautiful bride. Looks like she's getting ready on her big day, I'm guessing.
Yeah, this is just the getting ready portion, and she put her dress on and turned, and the light was just glaring through the window, and I was like, wait a second, just pause for a moment, and kind of just, I didn't even get to communicate what I wanted. She just started moving, and it worked.
Wow,
So,
yeah.
shot it, got a little flare. Yes, I did some editing to it to get a little more of the yellow tint there and really enhance the highlights coming through. But this is a good shot to remind you that you don't always need the most detailed shadows, and you don't always need the most detailed highlights. You can let an extreme happen
Oh
and
yeah,
still work in your favor. So play
definitely.
around.
It definitely sets the mood. I think if it would have been, exposed, so everything was exposed, like evenly, it would not have, it would have been too generic of a shot. This has
Right.
romance and mood to it, and it's definitely great.
And it helps that she was a beautiful bride.
Oh
so
yeah,
that's always a bonus.
never hurts. Never hurts. So the last shot, of course, you're on mirrorless minutes, and I'll mention that the previous 4 shots were shot non-mirrorless, correct? They were shot with, you said,
Correct.
Nikon D4 you shoot with?
Yeah, my Nikon D4, or I think they were all in the D4. Yeah, let's just say that.
Yep. So, but recently, though, you've picked up a mirrorless camera, and this was shot with said camera?
Yeah, following you and Mike being on Take and Talk Pics, I was like, you know what? I gotta see what this is all about because I've been hearing stuff, but I never really paid attention. So I emailed you guys and said, what should I get? And you gave me amazing resources. Of course, your site is a great help too, but you gave me specific recommendations, and I was gonna do a Colorado trip up in the mountains for 4th of July weekend this past 4th of July. And I was like, I can't be going around with my bulky DSLR and my lenses. And my buddy, he's super outdoorsy. He lives out there. And he was telling me, dude, you can't carry more than 5 pounds of equipment aside from water. So I was like, that's not going to fly with my gear. So I got to figure something out. So I didn't get the most amazing or even like pro level kind of mirrorless that is available these days. I ended up going with the OMD EM10 from Olympus with a kit lens of the, 14 to 42.
Correct.
And then I ended up getting a 40 to 150 lens. And I got some macro filters for the front of it and some neutral density filters. So I had some options to play around with because I wanted a lightweight kit to bring with me to give me some options. And I just had a blast. It was so easy to maintain this equipment and play around very quickly. And we're actually about 11,000 feet up for this picture. And we were going to hike up a mountain, but I got horrible altitude sickness. That did not happen.
Oh, no.
And the only way away from my altitude sickness was actually to distract myself. If I was just sitting there feeling sick, that was it. But if I was, munching on some food or taking pictures, I was totally clear. And it kind of distracted my mind enough that it didn't feel weird or give me a headache. So I was taking pictures like crazy. And
Nice.
We had this nice little runoff river from the melt. And yeah, 4th of July weekend, there's still snow on the mountains way up there, and it's running off all summer long. So there's this little river going through, and I got down low and just captured this with Princeton out in the distance there at Mount Princeton. So
nice.
It's just a beautiful scenery. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you definitely have to appreciate the lightness of going with a mirrorless system, especially in a situation like that, where you are limited on what you're going to be able to carry. I mean,
right.
In all honesty, I would have never guessed that somebody would tell me if we're hiking that you're going to want to be at like 5 pounds or less of extra gear.
Right.
That's kind of freaky. At that point, you're probably considering.
The water, you don't want to bring much. So.
Right. It shows you the level of experience I have in hiking in the mountains, like maybe 3 times in my whole life, and none of which, unfortunately, except for this year, were with cameras. So, all All right, so I guess I'll do a quick share, kind of some of the stuff that I've been up to lately. Let me do this here real quick. Man, like I said, I'm juggling too many windows on. I'm doing dual screen. I'm trying to not look at the other screen because I don't want to look away from the camera. So, all right, so let's see. First shot up, and I've just kind of gone back through and started looking at some images that I shot earlier this year. I had an outing with a few of my buddies. We went to the Lake Michigan shoreline. It was like a guy's camp out at my camper. I had 3 of my photographer friends and myself all spent a couple of days on the west side of Michigan shooting. And one of the nights we went to Little Sable Point Lighthouse. And I think I've shared shots from there on a previous show, but this was me just kind of playing around shooting the Milky Way. And it's amazing the amount of light on the horizon in the distance from cities that are, well, they've got to be, well over 100 miles away. So it's light pollution at its best there. This is just facing south along Lake Michigan to get the densest part of the Milky Way. The big surprise, though, again, was that we were there just to shoot the Milky Way at the lighthouse, and we were all facing south to shoot the densest part of the Milky Way. And I wanted to capture a series of photos going from, south to north or whatever, vice versa, so that I could try to eventually at some point work on stitching together a panel that showed the entire Milky Way. When I turned and faced north and started shooting, I was pretty blown away at the color that was starting to show up on the back of the camera because it was barely visible to the naked eye. So we were pretty blessed to have the northern lights show up on that night as well. Right. And in the distance down the shoreline there, you can see my buddy David standing there. He's actually shooting a shot of the northern lights from that position as well. So, and these are all this. The first 2 are with the OMD EM5 Mark II, and they're both shot with, I think, the 7-14 f2.8 Pro. Actually, the top one, this first one, I think might have been with the fisheye, the f1.8 fisheye. This is of my nephew Asher. So we spend a lot of time, pretty much every weekend, camping. The same camper that I took my buddies to is the camper that my family and I go to almost every single weekend. It's only an hour and a half away, and it's on the west side of the state near Lake Michigan, and it's a good getaway. And it gives me a chance to just kind of document family life. And like I said, this is my nephew Asher, and I'm not sure what he's got in his hand. I remember it was a bug, and I don't know that it survived this photograph, but you can tell by the expression on his face that whatever's going on in his hand is probably not something that I want to put on the camera necessarily. But this was shot with the new Olympus OMD EM10 Mark II and the 17 millimeter f1.8, which for people who are street shooters, that's kind of like the go-to lens. So for the whole weekend that we were up there this past weekend, that's the combo that I used almost exclusively, just to walk around, kind of an all-purpose lens. Kind of amazed at the depth of field you can get on, everybody's like, oh, crop sensor, micro 4/3, no shallow depth of field. You can get pretty shallow if you know what you're doing, if you're shooting wide open. Just processed with a Lightroom filter that I made. And this is what the kids were up to. One of the neighbor campers, who's kind of become a friend of the family, always seems to have some sort of craft projects for the kids. So it was fun to capture just the happenings around the campground, with the kids. And I liked all the bright colors of the beads. And again, it was just kind of one of those little lifestyle shots of things going on. And this is her dog, her little Shih Tzu that I don't know. I'm thinking, I don't know if she bought a Shih Tzu or if she bought an Ewok or what she's got, but he's pretty cute. And he was definitely interested in the camera because every time I pointed at him, he'd stop and crane his neck up towards me. And again, this is just right out of the camera with the 17 millimeter f1.8. Again, EM10 Mark II. So, I mean, Shih Tzus are small, so shallow, that shallow of a depth of field shows you that you can get it pretty shallow. This last shot, I just shared it because I wanted to show one of the new features that's in the OMD EM10 Mark II. And it's actually part of a new firmware announcement that was just announced this week. So this technique will be available in the EM5 Mark II and the EM1 as well. So this is focus stacking. And for people that are into macro photography, and if you don't know what this is yet, I'll just give a brief rundown. It's a really cool technique for increasing your depth of field. If you shoot macro, you usually end up with like a razor thin depth of field. And you can see on the left-hand side of the image here that the focal plane in front of the bee, it basically just gets the one eye and part of it, the front of his head, and that's it. Everything else is completely like blown out. That's wide open on that lens. It's the first frame in a sequence of 7 images at f2.8. The image on the right shows what happens when you bracket a series of shots. So, and the EM10, and again, like the EM5 Mark II and the EM1 will all be able to do this. I set it up so that I wanted to take 7 images, and there's like this little gauge in the camera. You can tell it if you want the focal adjustments to be wide or narrow, and I just left it right alone on the default, like right in the middle. And what happens is you set your first focus point, which for me was on the front of the bee, the eye, and then I just basically hit the shutter. And what happened is extremely fast. It fired off a series of 7 images at various focal points on the bee. And I just brought them into Photoshop, and you use photo merge. It's really easy to do. And it blends all the different images, all 7 of them together, and you get a deeper depth of field or focal plane that shows through on your image. So it's kind of a cool way to get detailed macro photos of insects and not have just one eyeball in focus. You can see on this bee that it goes back all the way to, like his middle leg or what have you. And this is one of those little tiny bees that almost looks, some people call them sweat bees. They're about the size of your, pinky fingernail, itty bitty. And just a really cool way to get some detail. And I just did this at 7 frames. And I could go, and this is just ludicrous, you can set it all the way up to 999 frames. Now, I've got a pretty powerful iMac that's maxed out on RAM, and it's one of the newer iMacs. I'm not going to try and throw 999 frames at it, but I have done some images that are 25 frames and stack those. And you can start getting some really interesting looking photographs if you're taking something from such a close perspective and then now allowing yourself to have elements in the background come into focus as well. And I'm working on a shot. I've got hundreds of frames. The toad was nice and set, still long enough for it. And I'm trying to stack this. I'm trying to find a way to make it work so my computer doesn't melt, so that the not only will the toad be in focus and I'm like millimeters from his nose, but all the way out to, infinity will be in focus as well. So it would almost be like you're looking at a super ultra wide image with infinite depth of field, but at a macro level. It's just a weird concept I'm trying to make happen.
Yeah, with that, could you do like a batch of 20 and then the next batch of 20, and then once you have those completed ones?
That's exactly how I'm trying to get it to work. And I'm running into some weird artifacts, that Photoshop isn't quite handling right. And there's another software package called Helicon Focus a lot of people that are huge into macro, people that are like big names in macro, they use that. And I can't justify spending $200 on a piece of software for a concept shot yet, but I might get to that point where I have to do something like that, or maybe download the trial and see if it does it even with a watermark on it. And if it does, maybe I'll pay for it at that point. But it's not just for macro photographers either. So, other instances where you might want to use something like that is if you're a product photographer. There's nothing worse than wanting to get a real detailed up close shot of, like, say, the inner workings of a watch. You don't want just a couple of teeth on the gear in focus. You want the entire inner workings of it. And, traditionally it's done with like a focus rail system. You take one shot and then you move the focus a millimeter and then you take another. It's time consuming. The shot with the sweat bee, 7 frames, literally took like a second. It's insane how fast the whole process works. So I'm thinking, product photographers, but another use that I'm going to try, and I just haven't found the right environment for it yet, is landscapes. Everybody that's big into landscape always, wants to calculate out like the hyperfocal distance so that they can get the foreground all the way out, into the background and focus. This way, it's really not going to be a problem. You can just start off at the foreground and say, okay, I'm going to do 40 shots at the widest interval that it'll do, and just let those just build out and stack them up in software. So
right,
kind of a cool technology. And like I said, that's on the I don't have it here, the OMD EM10 Mark II, which was like an entry-level camera. And I think that there was such positive feedback from it, that it was probably rushed into being added to the other cameras. I don't want to say rushed, but it's I think that the excitement was there enough to where that they knew that it needed to be put into the higher end cameras as well. So, and like I said, that's the new firmware update for the other two OMD bodies. Now I won't go into detail about what that update is because we're short on time, but just know that there's a big update coming for other Olympus OMD owners, and that'll be dropping sometime in November. So you can just kind of watch the show when that drops. You'll know because Mike and I will be going crazy over it talking about it. But so we're like at the 30-minute mark here, and I've got a family downstairs waiting to see me, and I'm sure you've got some work to do as well because, man, you got that crazy schedule. So,
always, yeah.
You want to just you got anything coming up that you're working on that you want people to know about that we can kind of mention here?
If you're gonna be in the area, or you are in the Chicagoland area, I'm gonna be doing a workshop on October 3rd. It's totally free, so it's just gonna be going over some off-camera lighting, probably portraiture, and seeing what we can do with that and hanging out. I would really just want it to be a big hangout. It's not gonna be a super technical official workshop. We're just gonna play and get together, go grab some coffee afterwards. It's basically a Take and Talk Pics meetup, I guess, So
cool,
if you're
very
interested
cool.
in that, head to takeandtalkpics.com and you can sign up there on the workshop tab. So
right on.
Awesome.
Now make sure that the link gets added into our show notes here so that people will have a quick link to that as well as a link to your podcast is it on iTunes as well now?
We got iTunes,
and
Stitcher Radio. If you have an app there's a lot of different apps and they usually pull from iTunes,
right?
Or you can listen to it directly off the website. So
right on. Then I'll definitely make sure that we include the link to your iTunes podcast as well. So cool. Thanks for stopping in, Rob. It was awesome. I haven't seen you since Chicago, and I'm hoping to get to hang out and shoot again sometime soon.
For sure. I got to go see Lake Michigan from that side because it looked backwards to me. So.
Oh yeah, very good. Yeah,
we'll have to get together.
Definitely. All right. Awesome. So from everybody at Mirrorless Minutes, which would just be me this week, thanks for stopping in, Rob, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you for having me.